Hi, Bob. How are we doing?
Dun, 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 dun.
Tell us about the renminbi. We're hearing people talking about the fact that people are talking about maybe beginning to switch over to use that as a reserve currency rather than the dollar. What's this all about?
Well, the Chinese are asking people to use a renminbi and trade with them, particularly banks. And I think that for the Chinese, that's a good deal. They have an undervalued currency so that they can make goods cheap and compete or beat other exporters, particularly to the United States. So it's not an unusual happening. What people fail to believe, fail to understand, is that the Chinese and all other countries deliberately devalue their currencies so that the goods are cheap in the United States. Two reasons. Number one, to be competitive and screw the Americans. And number two, to be able to continue to engage in the denigration of their currency, because when they do that, they have to buy dollars, and that makes the dollar stronger.
Well, do you think that the Chinese will be able to replace the American dollar as the reserve currency?
Absolutely not. Not a chance.
All right, fine. We're going to be back in just a moment with Bob Chapman right here at Radio Liberty. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and Bob is just saying about all the economic problems they have over in China, and they've got tremendous debt there. They've got tremendous corruption over there. They've got whole cities, beautiful cities with skyscrapers and all sorts of condominiums, gorgeous, and nobody living there because nobody has the money to buy them. And basically, these command economies don't work. They didn't work in Russia. The only reason they're doing so well in China is we've been subsidizing them for years. We've been keeping them in power. But, I mean, China is certainly on the verge of an economic collapse, just like America's on the verge of an economic collapse, just like Europe is on the verge of an economic collapse. The only countries that are doing pretty well maybe would be India, some places down in Malaysia, or maybe in South America. Would you agree or disagree with that, Bob?
I agree with that. And I don't think China's going to fall apart tomorrow morning, but they do have problems which are equally as bad as the United States. And, you know, we have 300 million people. They got 1.4 billion people. A big difference. China needs to get rid of half of their people. So what do? We have a war, and they get involved in it, and they all get killed. I mean, that's what these people do for centuries. They do it over and over and over again.
I think it's so hard for Americans really to imagine these things have happened in the past. I was just reading about the fall of Jerusalem in 70 A.D. 1 million people were killed, and another 1 million were taken away in slavery. I mean, we're talking about phenomenal numbers of people, you know, even in those days. And certainly, I fear the next war is going to be far more bloody. The First World War, 70 million people killed or injured. The Second World War, probably 150 million people killed or injured. I hate to think what will happen with the coming war, but everything points it's only a matter of time. When it's coming, who even the enemies are going to be, we don't know, but we do know that they're preparing for war. Go right ahead, Bob.
I think there's a very good chance that war will accompany the financial problems of the world. And when the bad guys are ready to pull the plug, they'll pull it. And, you know, the tip-off probably will be higher interest rates, and from there on out, probably it'll go deflationary. And, you know, they'll allow that to happen when they're ready. And they obviously aren't ready yet.
And because apparently there are a lot of even dissension on the Federal Reserve Board. Some of the people on the Federal Reserve Board are not agreeing with Ben Bernanke's current program of keeping the interest rates at 0%, so the large banks can borrow at 0%, but they're not lending it at 0%. They're simply investing it, in T-bonds and getting 2 or 3%. Well, you borrow at nothing and you get 3%. That's pretty good, especially if you borrow enough. And so they're simply using this whole scheme by which the American taxpayer dollars, which of course are going to be used to finance all that interest, of why the American taxpayer dollars is simply being funneled into the Brotherhood of Darkness banks. But go right ahead, Bob.
Well, that's true. And it will continue until they are ready to do what they want to do. But they got to have a war, because they have to have something to blame it all on. And the war is a distraction as well. And they've been getting the American people warmed up. And they'll probably institute a draft so they can get rid of a lot of young people on both sides, whatever the other side is. And that's the way they've always done it. And I think they'll continue to go along that path. They're not hard to figure out.
No,
I wrote something for the next issue, and I talk about experts, analysts, economists, newsletter writers. They miss the whole point. They don't understand the history of what goes on behind the scenes. And if you cannot understand that, you can't make good decisions, because it's not logical. It is what they want it to be. And so you can't take a path, and you can't make predictions, and you can't be effective unless you understand the whole program that they've got set up from behind the scenes.
I think that's so important. If you're looking for logic, you're not going to find it, because none of this is logical, because it's all manipulated. And once you understand that, then, of course, you're not surprised when these incredible things happen. Well, certainly, we're hearing now certainly that the sales of new homes is falling and really doing very, very poorly. I think you said this was something, what was it, equivalent to about 1963 or something, that people are just not buying new homes?
Well, there was not a sale of one home that sold for over $800,000. And I don't know what the figure is. It's either 1% or 10 houses that sold for $500,000 to $800,000. The market is totally strangled. And all of what you've seen for the last couple of years, all that paper is being held by Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie, and FHA, and most of it's subprime paper, because they tried to save the bottom of the market because it was the easiest. And, of course, you had these credits that were given $8,000 to entice the unknowing into buying homes. And it's not going to improve. There's 3.5 years inventory for sale. Normal inventory for sale is 4 months. And that figure is going to get bigger. Several million people are going to lose their homes this year and next year. I mean, you haven't seen anywhere near the bottom yet. And they're still writing subprime loans.
And I think that's so amazing. They're actually letting people buy homes that can't afford them, with maybe 3% down, and people who will never be able to pay the loans back. But why not do it? Because after all, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will buy the loans. The people who are lending don't have anything to worry about. They unload them, and then when Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac get into trouble, where do they go? Why, the American taxpayer finances all these fraudulent loans, and the American taxpayer isn't smart enough to realize what's going on.
Well, let me tell you another goodie. It's been in the publication a number of times. And that is that the Fed bought, that we know of, $1.8 trillion worth of toxic loans, most of which are subprime.
These were the bundled loans that were sold, at face value, and were probably worth 20 cents on the dollar, something like that. But the Fed went ahead and paid 80 cents on the dollar, and now they're going to sell them back to the banks at 20 cents on the dollar. The bank's going to make out like bandits, and we're stuck with a bill.
$1.2 trillion.
And the mayor...
And they're going to do it over and over again for the next, 5 years maybe.
Right.
I don't know how long, because I don't know when they're going to pull the plug. And neither does anybody else. It's just like I said in the program 7 or 8 months ago, that I thought by the end of the year they would be getting together to have a meeting to devalue and revalue currencies and to default multilaterally. Well, lo and behold, now we have another quantitative easing. So all bets are off, because they changed the rules, because they said earlier this quantitative easing, number one, would be sufficient to get everything back and right again, and everything would be flowing. And I based my decision on that, plus what I learned from others who are in a position to know. And, of course, that thing's all been thrown into the air because of quantitative easing. The same thing happened when at 14,000 I called 6,600 the bottom. And promptly it went to 6,600 on the Dow. And actually went to 6,550. And I said it would go back normally to 8,500 and then come down and retest. I had no knowledge that there was going to be TARP and all these other programs. And that's what made the market go up to 11,700. So there's things that you just can't know that they're going to do. And when they do them, and you got to be fortunate if you can see it.
Well, basically,
I saw what went on in Greece. I made the call on it. I knew what they were up to. And recently I made the call that the market was going to rally from 96.80 probably to 10,200. It went to 11,200, went a little bit further. Why? Because the people who own the Fed are the people who own the big banks, the Federal Reserve banks. They're the ones that plan what they're going to do. And so they always have inside information. They always have a license to steal. It's pretty simple. Public doesn't stand a chance. It's a rigged game.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think anybody in the stock market should have their head examined. But now, of course, so many people are going into the bond market. Oh, well, we want safety. We want security. We're going to buy bonds. What would you tell the people who are getting into bonds because they want security?
When you're being deceived and you're suicidal, why would anybody buy bonds when they can buy gold and silver, bullion, coins, and shares that have already been in an 11-year bull market, the biggest bull market in the history of mankind? Why would you do such a thing? I mean, you've got to be dumber than dumb. I mean, why would you? Let's use the 10-year, which is a long-term bond. It's yielding 2.54 today, 2.54%. Inflation is 7.54%. Why would you want to do that and automatically lose 5%? You got to be a dingbat.
Because that's what all the financial experts say that you should be doing. This is what the financial, the advisors are telling people. You want to be safe now. This is the time to invest in bonds. And, of course, everybody else is saying it. People are doing it. They're driving up the cost of the bonds, driving down the interest rates on the bonds. But, ladies and gentlemen, I think Bob will agree that one of these days it's all going to change. And when it does, so many people who have invested their life savings in bonds because they want to be safe are in for a big, big, big surprise. We'll be back in just a moment with our good friend Bob Chapman right here at Radio Liberty.